Welcome to my review of the Expert Classes Unearthed Arcana. Now, to start, I am not reviewing the entire Unearthed Arcana, alright? People have already done that. There's Treant Monk, I'm sure the D4 guy is going to do it, Dungeon Dudes, Matt Colville, Bob World Builder, all those guys, they're going to give you a way more in-depth look at the classes, subclasses, and feats and features than I'm going to. That's not what I'm here for. That's not what I'm good at. It's not what I specialize in. What I'm good at is going to be reading the context and subtext, looking at trends, and making predictions for future unearthed arcanas and changes we're going to see. So please bear with me. Some of my guesses may be wrong. I'll eat crow when that happens. But I have a feeling I'm going to be right more often than I'm wrong. So I'm going to go through all 38 pages, but I'm going to skip at least 50% of them because I'm not going to cover the in-depth material. Rules glossary, all this stuff, basically summarizing the new rules glossary, anything that contradicts old rule glossaries in previous UAs, you always go with the newest one. Pretty basic, straightforward. Now this talks what's ahead in the 1D&D playtest. Here's some of the highlights for what's coming in the months ahead. Revised of every class from, we see that. 48 subclasses, that's happening. New and revised spells. I think it's interesting that we're getting new spells because I think we have a lot of freaking spells. I don't see why we need new spells. They should just be honest. Forget the backwards compatible thing. Put the already existing spells from the other books into the core rule book. Just give us all the spells in that book. I shouldn't need Tasha's, Fizbin's, Xanathar's to get my full spell list. Just put them all in the player's handbook. Let me have them. They're rewriting everything so much that it's backwards compatible because they won't exist. Some of the systems will probably exist, like the patron system from Tasha's, some of the gifts and magical equipment you get from Fizbin's. Yeah, that stuff, sure. You let us keep that. Let us keep using that. But 80% of the books are going to get rewritten and added in here. New and revised feats. We have seen this to a degree. I'll talk about that a little bit when we get down to feats, but I'm not worried about it. Here's an important part I want to talk about. New weapon options for certain classes. I think we're going to see weapon changes. We already see one in this playtest. We're going to cover that. I'm expecting more, and I'll talk about my predictions when we get to that. Encounter building, monsters. Yeah, we'll see that later. I have really no predictions about that, except for maybe I'm thinking you will see monsters that have certain abilities that allow for multiple actions, but to be done as bonus actions or free actions. When we get to the different kinds of actions, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Don't worry about primary. Don't worry about that. All right, class groups. Here's where I think it gets interesting. So first off, they list the class groups in alphabetical order. That's pretty normal. They seem to be going alphabetical order for a lot of these things. The feats are alphabetical order. I believe the Bard, Ranger, Rogue are introduced in alphabetical order. Cool. I believe we're going to see these class groups also released in alphabetical order. So my prediction is we're going to see the next class group is going to be the mages, the sorcerers, warlock, and wizards. Cool. I can't wait. Pretty excited. I'll be honest. I hate that warriors look like they're going to be last because I need to see some things with monk and barbarian. I'm holding out some hope. I have some fears, and I'll again talk about those later. But what I'm going to talk about right now is that I think we're going to go in order. So experts, mages, priests, and warriors. Now the characteristics, I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this so far. I've seen a lot of people talk about the experts, what we have so far. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about the actual description, right? The characteristics are polymaths who have the expertise feature and elements of other classes. We see that. We see that in the bard, when the bard gets their healing. We see that with the ranger that gets some of their spell casting and their unique stuff. We see the rogue when they start being able to mess with spells and getting more movement and feel more monk-like with all that extra stuff. We see that. And they all have expertise. Now, when we go to the mages, it specifies adepts of arcane magic. All right. We might see, I don't want to say, they're not making them all intelligence casters. I wouldn't imagine. I think sorcerer is still going to be charisma caster. Warlock, I wouldn't, I wouldn't be surprised if they keep it charisma caster, but I also wouldn't be too surprised if it switched to intelligence. I know it was at one point with playtest stuff, and then they switched it. Frankly, I think we need too many charisma casters, too much doubling down on super useful feats outside of spellcasting also being our spellcasting ability modifiers. Dex is already a super useful feat or feature to have all of your ability points into. When you're a Dex build, it just goes further than a lot of things. But I'm not worried about it. The utility and destruction part, I think, is interesting. And I'm going to make a prediction right now, and I'm going to elaborate on what. I can't predict the Warlock, because God knows what they're going to do with the Warlock. Sorcerer is going to be your destruction. Wizard's going to be your utility. I think they're going to drastically push wizards into the battlefield control position. They're already the best battlefield manipulators, but they don't have to be. But when we look at this UA further and I talk about things, I think you're going to start to agree with me when you look at the direction they're going with the Bard and with some of the other classes and some of the other features. They're going to push sorcerers into being those damage dealers, wizards into those battlefield controllers, and if you want to work out of that, you're going to take feats. You might take a specific subclass. I think we're going to see that. I think they want you to fill the trope in the role that class fills. And if you want to vary out of that, they're not getting rid of multiclassing. They make it very clear you can still multiclass, but I think you're not going to need to as often for the flavor. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it because you're a min-maxer, because you want to do, like, you're literally doing calculations. But I think if you want the flavor of a wizard that has armor and a shield and goes in and uses a short sword, I think you're going to see that. And I think you're going to see that because you get lightly armored as a level 1 feat with this UA, which gives you medium armor, light armor, and shield proficiency. Short swords have been switched to simple weapons. The Warcaster feat is a level 4 feat that gives you a stat increase. I think you're going to see. I think you're going to see. If you want to make that sword slinging wizard, you're going to use feats. But wizard itself is going to be pushed heavily towards utility. Sorcerer is going to be pushed heavily towards destruction. Now with this, the sense I'm getting is we are not going to have Eldritch Adept, Meta Magic Initiate or Adept, and like the spells like that give you access to those things. I think those are going to be class specific. They don't want you taking those from those class. They want your class to feel like that class. You're not going to play a wizard with sorcerer abilities because they're sorcerer abilities. If you want them, you need to be a sorcerer. I see that coming down the line. Spent a little longer on mages than I want, but I'm just giving you an idea of where my head's at. Priests, stewards of divine and primal magic, focusing on healing, utility, and defense. Healing, utility, and defense. In the order in which they name those things, right? So cleric, healing, druid, utility, paladin, defense. I think paladins are going to get drastically nerfed. I think we're going to see paladins. I don't even say nerf. I think they're going to be. I don't like the term nerf because I feel like they're going to lose things for doing damage, but they're going to gain things for boosting party members and protecting party members. They're going to be tanks. They're going to be able to draw aggro somehow. They're going to be able to defend people way better than the protection fighting style allows in this UA. It's awful. I think they're going to have other things. We're going to see paladins go away from those eldritch or those divine smiters who all their spell slots are for smites. I don't think so anymore. I think their spell slots are going to be for aura abilities and enhancement abilities and stuff like that. All right, I think we're going to see that. Warriors, I have a few predictions. None I'm comfortable enough saying. I don't even see Masters of Combat who can deal and endure many wounds. Yeah, I guess. It's just Barbarian, Fighter, and Monk. You have such a wide, like, the difference between them is so great. I can't see anything what's shared that they can bring together. I'm trying to think of what ability, because you have expertise among all of them. I'm sure you're going to see something that all like I can't tell what the groups are going to get. I don't know what the warriors are going to get that all the warriors have in common besides being able to pull from warrior specific feats. I guess you'll see the monk get fighting styles because that is now a warrior specific feat, and maybe key points work with fighting styles in a special way. I'm not sure, but I'm going to move on. Is here a lot of highlight, bear with me. You can prepare 2 0-level spells and 2 1st-level spells of your choice. Any spell you can prepare for this class must be an arcane spell and must be from one of the following schools of magic: divination, enchantment, illusion, and transmutation. Okay, this is important. They are making, if you look at those spells, if you look at the arcane spell list and you look at what fall under those spells, they're the most bard spells. Like, picture if somebody actually gave Yaskir from The Witcher or Dandelion, depending on which version you're a fan of. But imagine if they gave them actual magic, like D&D magic. These are the spells he would cast. They are making, when you picture bard, that's what they're trying to present to you, and that's what they're making the bard again. So the bard is, you make those weird builds where you're like, yeah, I made a swashbuckler bard that can do this, and they're taking that away. They're making it where if you're picking bard and you're going with bard, it's because you want to do the bard shit. You'll be able to do other stuff with feats. You can make that, but like the primary class isn't going to be so loosey-goosey and all over the place that you can fill any role by just taking subclasses and multi-classing. You're always going to be the utility support character. Okay? At higher levels in this class, you can prepare more spells. That's good. Always want to prepare spells. They don't know spells anymore, or they don't know limited spells. They know all of their spells, and you just prepare spells. All casters are going to be like that. They already admitted that. We're going to see that. The Rangers like that as well. The numbers... Okay, as shown on the bar table, the numbers there determine the number of different spells you can prepare for each level. So they're talking about the bard table. For example, as a 3rd level bard, you can prepare 2 different 0-level spells, 4 different 1st-level spells, and 2 different 2nd-level spells. This is wild, right? Now, you may not be understanding why it's wild just from reading it. But what they're saying is, these just aren't spells. This isn't just a list of how many spell slots you have. And they even say prepared spells per spell level. That means when you're a 20th level bard, you can only have 4 1st-level spells prepared. You can only have 3 2nd-level spells prepared. That's going to be interesting to work around, especially since I have a feeling they're going to carry this setting over to the other casters. Wizards are only going to be able to have 4 1st-level spells prepared. They're going to know all their spells. I mean, same with sorcerers, but it's going to be really interesting to see how they work around that and what they do with that. Having this prepared spell, spells you prepare equal to the spell slots available is very interesting. There's going to be a lot of times I don't need 8th level spells because a lot of 8th and 4th and 6th level spells, like they're usually more niche, or they're more out of combat casting. They're more things that you do in downtime and you do like thematically or for story reasons. You're not casting them on the daily or on the regular. They're not going to be a part of your like repertoire. But you're going to have to prepare those slots anyways. You can't take away from. So I can't decide when I'm at 8th level. Well, I don't want to prepare 2 4th level spells, so I'll just prepare an extra 2nd and 3rd level spell, or 2 extra 2nd level spells. That's not how it works anymore. I can prepare no more than 3 2nd level spells and 3 3rd level spells at level 8, and I have to prepare 2 level 4 or 2 4th level spells at level 8. That's again, I'm predicting they are carrying that over to all of the other classes. If they do, that's going to be insanely restricting, but creative at the same. You're gonna have to get creative with your spell list and your feats. Some feats you were probably looking at saying, well, I'm not gonna take that feat. Why would I take X feat if I'm going to be a wizard anyway? Well, you might need to. If you can only prepare so many spell slots, you might just take lightly armored because you're like, I'm not wasting mage armor on, or I'm not wasting a level 1 slot on mage armor. I'm going to take lightly armored because I want these spells. So I can see that. I can see that coming into play, not just with the wizard, but with sorcerer, warlock, cleric. I think we're going to see all those things. I think cleric is going to get a huge change, and again, I'll get back to that. These are the bard features. Again, I'm not going deep diving into the class. Ranger, though, look at their spell list. Prepared spells per spell level. It's the same thing. It's going to be the same. So you can cast for rangers. The ranger table shows how many spell slots you have at each level to cast your ranger spells of first level and higher. The number of different spells you can compare of each level equals the number of spell slots you have at that level. That's, for example, a 5th ranger, you have 4 first level and 2. Yeah, that's, again, so the ranger and the bard both have this limitation. The ranger's limitation is they can't use evocation spells. So see, they're already saying it's the primal spell list. You can pick from any school of magic except for evocation. So magic schools matter now. They really didn't matter that much. You saw this when they brought Shadow Touched and Fate Touched. When they brought those feats in, it's like, wow, I'm getting a 2nd level spell and a 1st level spell. Wait, there's a limitation. Interesting, but whatever. I think this is what they were testing the waters for, and they were planning out. I like it. I do. A lot of people don't. I think I like it because it's going to force you to think more about your feats. It's going to make you think more about other things. I noticed multi-attack, they changed that to the spell Conjure Barrage. And it's also interesting because they gave them the spell, but they also gave them this little mechanic. All right, so it doesn't count against the number of spells you can prepare. So they used to have this weird like attack multiple enemies, AoE thing, whatever. It was weird, but now they give them this spell, and you can also cast the spell with a 1st and 2nd level spell slots. When you do so, the spell's damage is reduced by a d8 for each slot level. So it's a 3rd level spell that does 3d8, area of effect, whatever. And then 2nd level, it does 2d8. 1st level, it does 1d8. This gives you a lot more versatility with your spells. And if this is a mechanic that they're going to add on other half casters and other 1/3 casters, I'm really interested to see that. I want to see if they add something like this with Eldritch Knight, Arcane Trickster, and other classes. I want to see how this works with the Paladin. Unfortunately, we're probably only going to see the Paladin and see if they get something like this, because they are not doing Arcane Trickster, obviously, with Rogue, and they're not doing Eldritch Knight with Fighter. At least that's my prediction, until later UAs. It's going to be a while till we see those. Here's what I want to talk about mostly. If a spell's school of magic is different from what appears in the 2014's Player's Handbook, an asterisk appears after the school. They're changing spell schools. Not a lot, some of them. Some of them it's easy to understand why. Dancing Lights, they change it to illusion so the bard can take it. Blindness, deafness, the bard can take it. Thunderwave, it's transmutation, the bard can take it. They wanted to keep those things on the bard spell list, right? I'm okay with that. Flaming Sphere, they moved it to Evocation. I don't know what it was before. I think it was Conjuration, maybe. I think that's interesting. Sending's Divination, it should have always been Shatter, Transmutation. Great Bard spell. Again, we're getting further down in this. Stone Skin, they did more than just make it Transmutation. They did a pretty good change to Stone Skin. I like it. Glibness, they made it enchantment, so it's still a Bard spell. Telepathy, that's cool. Contingency is an abjuration, that's cool. Again, I think that's all more flavorful. Divine spells. All right, I know I'm probably talking a little fast. Sorry, but I was just getting through shit that didn't matter. This is shit that matters. Man, I was really good about not cussing earlier, and then I lost it. Why? Because I think this is wild. Remember when I talked about the priest class, and I said it said cleric, and then it said healing, and then it said druid and support or utility, and then paladin and defense. They changed guidance spell, whatever. They changed all healing spells that used to be evocation to abjuration. Well, okay. Why is that a big deal, huh? Why? Come on. It's semantics. Remember the bard limitations, right? So if you look at the bard limitations, how would you expect them to apply those limitations to the cleric? Because I expect for them to not allow the cleric to take evocation except for maybe the light domain or the war domain, right? I expect you to see clerics to get divination, because divining is a cleric thing, necromancy, and abjuration. I think at the bare minimum, you will see them get those three. That's like, you can pull from the divine spell list, but you can only pull from abjuration, necromancy, transmutation, and divination. Just like the limitation on bard, you will get that limitation on cleric. You will have other chances to pull without that limitation, possibly with subclass, but they changed all of the healing spells from evocation spells, which basically says, hey, these healing spells were in the same class as spells that did damage and were attack spells. We're moving them away. And I think that's because the paladin's not going to have healing. The paladin's going to be evocation based. Maybe, or the paladin's just evocation and abjuration. I'm not sure. Yeah, because paladins are going to have these aura abilities. You may even see paladins get spirit guardians, because paladins are definitely going to be able to summon steed. So I think you're going to see them getting evocation, conjuration, abjuration, whereas divination, abjuration, necromancy, and transmutation are going to be just for the clerics, for the divine spell list. I think that's how they're going to split the spell list up. I think there will still be crossover. I'm not saying clerics will no longer do evocation spells. I think the base class cleric will not start with evocation spells. I think if you want evocation spells, you will have to pick a specific domain, or you will have to take Magic Initiate, or other features or abilities will give you access to those spells, but I do not think you will get them with the main class. That is a prediction. That's that. That's all I got. I'm just putting it there. Primal spells. I believe Fairy Fire is only on Primal spell list, but it's not evocation, or it's evocation, so Rangers can't take it. So what that tells me is the Druid's going to have to be able to take it. Because if the Ranger can't take evocation spells, why have any evocation spells on the spell list? You're going to give Fairy Fire to the Druid. It's a very utility. So that makes sense. I'm looking here. Yeah, again, Cure Wounds was changed to Abjuration. I don't know. So they moved. Another interesting caveat was that the Rangers couldn't use evocation. Well, a lot of people saw that. I think I saw Treant Monk specifically talking about that in a video, and he was like, oh no, we can't heal. But it was just initial reaction. I'm pretty sure later he read and he was like, oh, thank God, because they can heal. You still have Cure Wounds, and you still have the healing spell for rangers, right? The healing ranger spell. No matter what's better, what's good or not. If you're a ranger, you're popping good berries. Let's go. Calm down. Yeah, so healing spells are now abjuration. Pretty interesting. About actions required. They're using really specific language. So you have attack action. Okay, when you take the attack action, you can make one attack with a weapon or an unarmed strike. You can equip or unequip one weapon before or after you make any attack you make as a part of this action, even if the attack is with an unarmed strike. I think it's interesting. You can equip or unequip one weapon before or after any attack you make as a part of this action, right? So if you get multiple attacks, you can pull out multiple weapons and unequip multiple weapons. So you can, if you have multi-attack, you can slash with your first weapon. And then, since you're making another attack after any attack you make as a part of this action, before or after. So now since I get to make a second attack, I get to draw another weapon. So the dual fighting style, or the two weapon fighting, or whatever, the dual fighting feat, it still has the draw and stow two weapons at once. I don't think that, well, I guess it matters because we'll get to the light weapon property. I think it's worded differently than what I'm imagining. I'll have to go back and read it. About blind sight, dash action. See, they have another action there. All right, so taking the dash action allows you to make a bonus move during your current turn. So they're, follow me, right? Follow me with that terminology, action. Whoa, what's this? What's this? More actions. Help action, very specific thing. They go into a description about it. Hide action. Hide action is interesting because it's now a stealth check with a static DC. Cool. This explains more thoroughly how you can hide, which I don't think it's different. I think it's just more clear. Now on a successful check, you're hidden. Your total check is now the DC for a creature to find you with a wisdom check. Creatures used to use passive perception. You hid, the DC was whatever the creature's passive perception was. Or if the creature was actively looking for you, it was whatever their perception was. Now, the creature is going to have to use one of these new actions introduced in combat to find your rogue that hides in combat. So if your rogue uses cunning action to hide, when it comes to that creature's turn, that creature will have to waste an action with one of the newer actions. I can't remember if it's the search or investigate action. We'll find out. But they're going to have to use that to find you. That's big to me. And I think that changes how the game's going to work action-wise. I have to get to the bottom of this before I can tell you a lot of my other predictions. So here we have the influence action. There's a whole mechanic on how influence works, invisible, whatever. Jump action. Jump is no longer a movement. It's now an action. Interesting. Here is the piece de resistance. No one's talking about this. I've not seen a single person touch this yet. I may be wrong. There might be somebody, but I've watched some videos. I just feel like I haven't heard enough people going berserk over this. Magic action. When you take the magic action, you cast a spell that has a casting time of an action, or you use a magic item that requires an action to be activated. This is really important. Now you're going to ask me, why is this important? Right? This is important because there are so many abilities that just give you an extra action, or allow, it's like the wording is an action, attack action, or, something like that you could mix and match with spells, right? If they, in the next playtest with the mages, they expand upon this rule and clarify, just because something says attack action, that doesn't mean it applies to magic. It has to specify magic action. Now, I know I might be immediately contradicted because I do think some of the feats up above, don't mention magic action. They mention like just attacking with a spell, or when you hit with a spell, or you can use a spell, blah blah blah. Warcaster. You can use your reaction to cast a spell attack at the creature other than making an opportunity attack. I think spell sniper. I can't do my alphabet. Okay, spell. Being it you don't impose a disadvantage on your attack rolls. Your attack rolls 4 spells, ignore half cover with spells. So these all specify spells, so it might not contradict each other, right? But it might. So don't crucify me if I get this wrong. But I feel like that's in here. We have the search action, right? This is where we see the short sword became a simple weapon rather than a martial weapon. Why? Because they needed to give you another light weapon that wasn't a dagger, another finesse weapon. Rapier's martial. A lot of people aren't going to have martial weapons that used to have them. Bard doesn't have martial weapons. They don't have rapiers. They now have short swords, though. Magic action is going to matter when we look at the fighter, because I am predicting action surge no longer works with casting spells. I'm okay with that. It's very clear they're trying to make it to where you don't have to take 2 levels in fighter to feel like the best wizard, right? At level 1, you take lightly armored, okay? And then later down the road, you might get something else. If you want to feel like an armored wizard who's running into the fray like Gandalf and doing the battlefield control, but in the battlefield, you can still do that and you don't need your fighter levels. I think that's the way they're going. I may be completely wrong. I'm going to talk about the subclasses. They released 3 subclasses, right? They released Lore Bard, the most bardy bard there is. It's bard all over. When you picture Lore Bard, you picture Yaskir. When you picture the dude in the tavern playing music, hyping up his party. You picture Chris Pine, right? You're not picturing Brendan Fraser in The Mummy kicking ass. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a great rogue fighter multi-class. But like a lot of people made their bards that. That's not a bard. They're pushing bard back to what bard is supposed to be. They're doing the same thing with ranger. They gave you the iconic hunter. Maybe Beastmaster would have been more iconic, but they've already opened that basket, closed that basket, shoved their hands in there, broke up all the eggs, pulled out their yolk-filled hands, slapped us in the face, and then wiped our face off. I don't want to see any more Battlemaster. I want Battlemaster to be the last one they touch, because I'm tired of seeing all this and stuff about Battlemaster. Hunter was done well. I like Hunter. I don't care what anybody says. I think Hunter's great. It's very iconic. It's very Ranger. You picture the tracker, the hunter. I said Battlemaster. I meant Beastmaster. I'm an idiot. Same feelings, but replace battle with beast. My bad. I misspoke. The Beastmaster. I'm tired of the Beastmaster. I'm so tired of the Beastmaster, I didn't want to say Beastmaster, so I accidentally said Battlemaster because my brain was tired of Beastmaster. Hunter is iconic. They chose Hunter. Rogue, Thief. Thief is iconic. Thief is the most... When you think of Rogue, you think of that Thief, Prowler. You don't think of these rogues that people have that are the crazy crit building, damage dealing, in, kill, and out. They're not... Yes, there is a rogue archetype for that, but when you think rogue, the first thing that comes to mind is Thief. Okay, so that's what they gave us. They gave us player handbook classes, and they gave us the most iconic classes, and they gave them to us right off the bat. So when we get to those other class groups, you're going to see the same thing. My prediction for the Warriors, you're going to get Champion Fighter, you are going to get Berserker Barbarian, you are going to get Way of the Open Hand Monk. For Warlocks and the Mages, I cannot begin to predict what they're going to do. I have no idea how they're going to handle Warlock. I cannot even pretend to guess. Sorcerers, we're going to see wild magic. I think we're going to see wild magic sorcerers reworked. I think we're going to see something interesting with them. I think we're going to get wild magic sorcerers. Wizards, I actually think we're going to get 3 schools from Wizards. I think they're going to have to show us that because they are going to limit their spell list, and they have to show us how that works with schools. Because Wizards may be even more limited than the other classes, depending on what school you take. Or you may be able to pick multiple schools, but the wizard is completely reworked, so you don't have a individual school that you take. So you don't have 8 versions of the wizard. You pick 3, and you can only pick spells from those, or 4, or you pick up a different school every level up, or like every few levels you get to start preparing other schools, and at last, like at X level, you have all the schools, right? Maybe. I don't know. But I do think we're going to see multiple schools of the wizard sub. They're either going to rework the subclasses completely so you don't have an individual wizard subclass for each school, or you're going to see them just release 3 at a time for wizards and clerics, because they just had so many in the player's handbook, right? They said we're going to have new subclasses. I'm wondering if they're going to pull some of Xanathar's Tasha's and some of those other subclasses that are probably not going to mechanically work well with the backwards compatibility feature and throw them in the player's handbook to fix that. Because if they end up in the player's handbook, they overwrite the previous things. That still keeps it backwards compatible. Those are some guesses. Cleric, I think we'll see like life, light, and some other domain. I think with Druid, we'll see Circle of the Lands. Because Moon Druid, I don't think a lot of people have complaints about. I don't think people are more concerned. I think what they're going to take is they're going to take Circle of the Lands because it fell on its face next to Moon Druid, and it just could not. It just, going back to it, it never got that much better. I think we're going to see that. You also saw with Ranger, they got rid of how you chose like the 3 different types of Ranger archetype. Or like in Hunter, you got to pick like Giant Slayer and all this other shit. You get that with Circle of the Land as well, where you have to pick. I don't think we're going to have that. I think they're going to go with Way of the Ranger, and they're just going to give you an ability you can adapt to those things. So I think that's what we're going to get. Paladin, I don't know. I don't think it matters which one they pick. I think the class in of itself is going to be the most changed class. I think Wizard, Paladins, maybe Clerics are going to be the most changed. I hope Monks get some good changes, but I really do think Paladins and Clerics are going to be the most changed. Wizards might be changed, but still mechanically work similar. I'm not sure. I would like to see Eldritch Knight get an ability similar to that Conjure Barrage we saw, but I'd also like to see if Action Surge no longer works with a magic action. I would like to see the Eldritch Knight circumnavigate that. So you get the Eldritch Knight subclass, and then at X level, magic actions count when you take your Action Surge ability. That's just me. I'd love to see that. That's my big spiel on all that. The last thing I'm going to touch on, light weapon property. So they got rid of the attack with a light weapon, bonus action attack with another weapon. Now you just, if you attack with a light weapon, you have the option to attack with a second light weapon in your other hand for free. So this isn't a class ability. This isn't a feat. This isn't even a mechanic of the rules per se. This is a mechanic of the weapons with the light weapon property. The reason that's an important distinction is this is the first we've seen that. Quarterstaffs don't naturally have you can hit with the butt end of the staff as a free action when you hit with the top end. You don't have that. You have Polearm Master, which lets you do that with others weapons with heavy in the two-handed feature or the reach feature, but you don't get that with no other weapon has this right now. The reason they included light weapon property in this one specifically is because the Rogue and the Ranger are going to benefit from it. and that's important. I think my prediction, heavy weapons with the heavy property are going to have something similar to this. And when I say similar to this, I don't mean you get to attack twice with them. I think they're going to have improved critical range. They're going to have improved hit die on whatever strike. They're going to have something. I think you're going to see heavy weapons, thrown weapons. You're going to see they're going to give us something similar to 3.5 and Pathfinder, where weapons have their properties matter outside of just mechanically, can you throw it, mechanically how many can you wield, when. I think we're going to see that change. I think that's going to be fun. I think that's going to be interesting. The other action we talked about, study action, search action. They talked more specifically about what those are. Yeah, so I think actions are going to matter. I think we're going to have a lot of abilities when you get to wizard and fighter and these other classes that are going to clarify when their features affect a search act. Like you might even get some new spells or new abilities that allow you to take an extra action as long as is the search, study, or influence action. We might even get a feat like that where you get to how rogues get cunning action. You're going to have that where you can take these. I think you even get that. I think Keen Mind gives you the study the study action as a bonus action, which again, you're looking at this and you're like, wow, in my games that doesn't matter. But there are people watching this right now looking at that going, wait, I can in middle of combat decipher like magic. I can do an arcana check for a bonus action to like figure out what kind of magic is going on, what kind of spell he's casting, what kind of ritual we're trying to stop. I think it's also important because it allows you to identify a creature type. So if you have a spell that does something, like if you have to target like elemental, fae, aberrations, or monstrosities, you can use an arcana check to see if it falls into those categories. And if it doesn't, you're like, okay, well now I know not to use this spell that only affects those things, right? So I think in certain campaigns it's going to be good. I think the DMG is going to be really important. Some of these new rules they give us for balancing encounters and doing all that snaz. Fudge, I made this video way too long. I'm sorry, people. There's a lot. It's 38 pages, and I didn't even cover most of it. I barely covered in 16th of it. But it's a lot. It's a lot. I don't see a lot of people talking about what I'm talking about, though. I'm trying to be unique for you guys. I'm not covering the meat of it. I might later, but I think what I'm looking at right now is a bunch of stuff that other people aren't talking about. So that's the study action. Where's the search action? So like a creature has to make a perception check to find a concealed creature. That I think monsters are going to have the ability to make the search action as a bonus action or something else. I think it's going to be, that's wild. I think we're getting rid of passive perception, mainly because observant doesn't use passive perception. Monsters don't use passive perception anymore. I think you're going to see passive perception go away. Passive skill checks are going to go away, which I'm okay with because I never liked them. They're never smooth to use. There's always some confusion about when you use passive investigation, passive perception. I always like to call, like, I think there used to be an old rule taking 10, where it was like you're basically ritual casting the skill check, where it's like I'm going to take 10 minutes to do this, and that counts as a 10 on the dice roll or whatever. So you just do that, or like they would say just, so I'm happy they're getting rid of that. I never liked it. I think we're going to see new character sheets without passive perception on it. I don't think we're going to see passive perception come up. I think you're going to have an active perception, and you're going to have to actively search, because that's going to be interesting. But that's everything I got, guys and gals and orcs and elves. That's my short, condensed review. Just to summarize the most important part, I think we've already gotten the experts. Sorcerer, we're going to get wild magic, warlock, Fuck if I know. Wizard, we're going to get 3 of the wizard schools, or maybe even just see wizards just pick schools now at certain levels and they get extra spells or extra benefits from that. I don't think we're going to see like the enchantment wizard, which was awful. I think we're going to go away from that stuff. Cleric, we're going to see maybe 2 or 3 domains. We're going to see the cleric switch to healing and utility. I don't think you're going to get as many clerics getting heavy armor proficiency and martial weapon proficiencies. Druid's going to be utilitarian. I know they're still going to have wild shapes. I don't know what they're going to do with wild shape. I can't even begin to guess. Paladins are... I don't want to say they're going to lose Divine Smite, because that's wild, right? That's wild. They wouldn't take Divine Smite away from them. But they're focusing on healing, utility, and defense. Divine Smite does not fit any of those categories. Technically, the best defense is a good offense. So maybe, but man, it's not looking good, Pally mains. Those Dragonborn Pally boys are, probably Archon is not going to be smiting. Barbarian, we're going to see Berserker, and please, I hope they make Berserker good. I want a dual wielding Berserker. I want them to get where they, if you take the dual wield, like you get the ability to treat regular weapons without the heavy property as light weapons, and heavy weapons as if they don't have the heavy weapon property, where that you can make that choice as a fighting style specific to like warriors, which then means I can have a great axe and a battle axe and benefit from dual weapon fighting. Because I think just the Berserker Barbarian standing there shirtless with 2 axes in his hands are iconic, but mechanically they suck. But what we see is they're pushing us towards those iconic, tropey, very specific builds. The Barbarian going in, getting his ass beat, and beating ass. That's the Berserker Barbarian. That's what we're going to see. The most Barbarian. We're going to see Conan the Barbarian. They're giving us that. They gave us Yaskir the Rogue, or the Bard. They gave us your most roguey rogue. And the Ranger is fucking Aragon from Lord of the Rings. They gave us the Ranger, Strider, whatever. We're going to see monks, get fighting styles. I don't know what they're going to do with monks. I can't even begin to predict. Fighters, they're going to go with champions. Maybe Battle Masters. I know I've already said Battle Masters a dozen times, but I wasn't actually talking about Battle Masters. Maybe, but I think it's going to be champion. I think it's a more iconic role. I know Battle Master is the more played role and the more liked, but I think when you bring a new player to the table and they see the word champion, they think fighter. I think that's what we're going to see. Those are my big predictions. They're going to change monks, paladins, clerics a lot. From what I've seen in this one, spellcasters are going to work completely different because they already do right now. It's going to be bonkers. I'm excited. Can't wait to see if I'm right, if I'm wrong, how so. Appreciate you guys sticking through this really long video that was supposed to be really short, but I don't see how anyone can make a actually detailed video on as little as I did and in even less time. Maybe, but who knows. Appreciate you guys. See you later. Maybe I'll post some videos of actually deep diving into the specific classes and feats. Until then, have fun playing fantasy games.